私の中で音がする。それは私の中で何かが生まれると。
The Substance might be the loudest film out there about toxic beauty standards and industry pressure tearing a woman apart. However, few people know that The Substance is not the first film about a female celebrity who, caught between public's demand and her imperfect body, resorts to extreme measures just to stay relevant and desirable, only to end up physically and mentally destroyed, losing both herself and her career along the way. Let me be clear, The Substance is not a Helter Skelter ripoff. However, considering how much Coralie Fajar borrowed from the Japanese film, both in terms of plot, motives and visual choices, parallels are inevitable. It's not entirely wrong to interpret The Substance as an internal conflict between the perfect self and the real self, but that won't work with Helter Skelter. It's built differently and tells a different story. If Elizabeth Sparkle takes a masochistic path, destroying herself while desperately chasing her fate and glory, then Lilico is a full-on psychopath, willing to do absolutely anything to keep her grip on the world around her.
最初に一言。笑いと叫びはよく似ている。
This phrase opens the movie. It can be interpreted in two ways. From the perspective of an observer, we see protagonist who has it all figured out. Thriving, successful, she knows no hardship, and she goes through life laughing. But underneath that, she's constantly at war with herself, reshaping who she is to fit what everyone around her needs from her. And she can't feel genuine happiness because she's fundamentally rejecting her own self. Inside, she's screaming. Yet for us, it's all the same. We cannot know if she laughs sincerely or if this laughter hides an internal scream. Another interpretation could be from Lilica's perspective. For her, there is no difference between laughter and scream, because both are reactions, and the nature of the reaction doesn't matter. Anything is better than cold indifference. Either way, that phrase captures perfectly the character we're about to meet. There she is, a Lilico, mesmerizing on the outside, a nasty bitch on the inside. She steals the stage from less experienced colleagues, treats her assistant like absolute shit, and indulges whatever whim she has. However, her jolly life goes downhill when the girl notices dark spots on her body. These spots are the result of numerous plastic surgeries. As her boss, who Lilica calls Mama, puts it,
あの子はさ、元のまんまのもんは、目ん玉と耳と爪と、あそこぐらいのもんでさ、あとは全部作り物なんだ。
And from that point on, we watch Lilica spiral into despair, trying to hold onto her fate in beauty. After discovering the spots, Lilica and Mama go to the clinic to deal with the problem. By the way, art direction in this film is bloody gorgeous. The movie is filled with beautiful scenes and subtle details, and my most favorite one is right there. In the foyer of this clinic, there's a collage of Sandro Botticelli's The Birth of Venus. Venus is traditionally considered the goddess of love and beauty, and here she is depicted in fragments. This is similar to how people with body dysmorphia perceive themselves. They see fragments of the body clearly enough, but they fail to assemble a cohesive image that corresponds to reality. Often, the victims of plastic surgery are beautiful girls who simply couldn't properly recognize themselves to realize they were goddesses all along. Fantastic art direction, but I digress. A curious thing happened during this scene. In the original, a patient who couldn't afford maintenance procedures comes to the clinic, and the doctor calls her ungrateful and tells her to find a job. Now, when I watched Helter Skelter for the first time, I watched it with subtitles in another language, and the translators interpreted this phrase as beauty is also a job. And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, what a profound line. How it enriches the film's narrative. I could write a whole essay just unpacking that. Can you imagine my disappointment when I found out while writing this script that the woman was just complaining about broke clients, and all the depth was just translator taking creative liberties? Anyway, the doctor promises to patch things up, so Lilico is still in the game. We see loads of photo shoots and interviews, but she doesn't seem to enjoy it much. She tells her makeup artist,
カメラのシャッターを押されるたびにどんどん空っぽになっていく気がする。
what she strives for brings her no satisfaction, yet she cannot stop. And later, on her way home, we witness a dialogue between the girl and her assistant, where Lilico says,
これあげる。たまには使ってみたら。ドラッグみたいなもんだからさ。こんなのやればやるほどもっとやりたくなんのよ。
And here it is again, this inability to be satiated. It's a huge part of who Lilico is. In general, if you can't satisfy your hunger, it probably means you're consuming the wrong thing. What exactly our girl is craving will become clear a bit later. Meanwhile, Lilico meets her younger sister. The girl is far from Lilico's beauty standards, and though Lilico sincerely loves her sister, she can't help but criticize.
あんたもさ、見返してやんなよ。もっと痩せて綺麗になって。
She's not trying to put the girl down. She genuinely believes she's helping, that it will make her stronger. Because Lilico convinced it was beauty that gave her the strength she has now. But in her sister's eyes, it's the other way around. Lilico became beautiful only because she was strong. And here I want to go back to that translation error. Beauty is a job. Because honestly, it kind of is. An enormous amount of effort, money, and time is poured into staying attractive. And this job requires serious mental strength. Just basic maintenance can cost anywhere from hundreds to several $1,000s a month. And when it comes to invasive procedures, it's not just about money. You need to be real tough. The procedures themselves are often incredibly painful, and the recovery afterward can be long and problematic. There is a scene in the film that shows one of those procedures. Lilico lies strapped to the operating table while needles are pushed under her skin. This isn't the worst thing you've been through, the doctor says. What came before that is terrifying even to imagine. It's naive to believe that beauty is just about winning the genetic lottery. No matter how naturally beautiful a woman is, it's never enough. Even a flawless creature has to fight puffiness, watch their diet, work out a few times a week, and stay the right size. If you want to be beautiful, you must work for it. There's no way around that. Lilico is introduced to a new model, Kozue. No one says it out loud, but everyone understands she is Lilico's replacement. And while the young model's career is taking off, Lilico is rapidly spiraling down. Meanwhile, Lilico's boyfriend announces his engagement to another girl. The news don't exactly break her heart, but she's not ready to let go of what's hers, so she seduces Hada and her boyfriend so they do her a favor. Enchanted by Lilico, they attack an innocent girl and disfigure her. As a reward, Lilico drugs both of them and makes them have sex in front of her. Okay, let's talk about how Lilico builds her relationships with people. Lilico's relationships with Hada is pretty strange. She treats her assistant brutally, constantly humiliates her, and Hada just puts up with it without seeming to take offense. The line between them gets even blurrier once Lilico starts sexually harassing Hada and her boyfriend. The assistant goes through greater humiliations time after time, yet she doesn't try to stand up for herself, and even willing to commit a crime for her tormentor. Is the power of Lilico's beauty over her really that great? Not exactly. The thing is, no matter how it looks, Hada isn't actually a victim in this relationship. She's an active participant. Nobody's holding her there by force or making her do anything. She chooses to run after Lilico. The relationship is transactional. While the unhinged psychopath gets a tool to pursue her own goals, Hada gets access to the model's body, as well as a sense of being needed.
リリコさんは、私がいないと何にもできないんです。私がいないと何もできないんだよね。
あだちゃんがいないとダメなのよ。
Another interesting character is Lilika's boss. She refers to her as Mama, and even though the woman isn't her biological mother, she still feels a maternal role. It's thanks to her that Lilika got the new face, career, and success she has now. The girl is literally wearing her face.
そっくりですね、リリコさんに。つまり、リリコはあなたのレプリカント。
This relationship is also built on mutual benefit, but the dynamic here is different. Mama provides Lilika with care and support, and in return, she gets income from the model's contracts and a sense of self-satisfaction. After all, she is an important project for her. However, that is the limit of the intimacy. Every time Lilika reaches out to Mama for warmth and connection, she gets a formal response, and then Mama disappears again. Men don't play a big role in Lilika's life. The boyfriend is just another filler for her insatiable need for love. Hada's boyfriend is only there to see how far Lilika can go destroying other people. The only exception is the detective. Yes, alongside Lilika's story, there is a detective subplot investigating the clinic's criminal activities. I haven't mentioned it because it's pointless, and the detective character feels like he walked straight out of a bad anime.
いいね、朝のコーヒーは。カップの中に漆黒の闇が溶け込んでいるようだ。甘く、そして儚い。
それなんかのポエムですか？
ん？
いいえ。
When Lilika and the detective meet, they have a conversation that makes her feel like she's finally found someone who can understand her. But the barely formed connection is cut off the moment he admits that he knows about her past life before the plastic surgeries. It might seem like the girl is just unreasonably cruel to the people around her, but she's just as merciless towards herself. Lilika chose her own body as a tool to achieve her goals. Her first attempt to get love landed her in the sex industry, where the body is nothing more than an object to satisfy someone else's desire. When that didn't give her what she wanted, she decided to make a change and fix her body in the most radical way possible. And even when it looks like she's finally reached success, she only continues to sink deeper into hatred and madness. And as we'll see later, her final, most radical statement comes in the form of a public act of self-harm. Treating the body not as part of herself, but purely as an instrument that can endure needles, scalpels, and other people's touch is a sign of a deep split between her mental and physical parts. And it's this very detachment that lets Lilika go so far in her pursuit of what she wants. A person who forces themselves into something will inevitably force others into it too. That's why she gives Hada cosmetics, suggests surgery to her sister, and forces others to use drugs. She tries to bring others down to her level, and when it turns out they don't have the same bitterness and filth in them, she's genuinely confused. But while we've been talking about the nature of human relationships, Lilika has completely lost it. She orders Hada to harm the young rival while she's having the time of her life on a TV show. Meanwhile, Hada finds Kozue and points a craft knife at her, to which the girl says,
いいよ。やれば？
Let's talk about Kozue. Lilika's rival looks particularly striking in contrast to her. She doesn't crave attention or try to dominate every room she walks into. She's young, beautiful, and charismatic. She fits into the system instead of fighting it. With a carefree laugh, she admits that she throws up after dinner.
え？モデルなんてみんな入ってますよ。じゃなきゃあんな細いわけないじゃないですか。
There's no drama and desperation in her that we see in Lilika, because she has nothing to fight for. The girl perfectly understands her place in the industry and knows her success is fleeting. Today she's on top, tomorrow there will be others. She doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. She just takes opportunities and does her job. Kozue keeps her identity because she knows the rules of the game and accepts them, while Lilika sincerely believes that if she just pushes hard enough, she can force the world to give her what she wants. That's why when Kozue finds out what Lilica has yet to do, she says,
なんであんな執着心あるんですかね。
she genuinely doesn't understand the cruelty Lilica shows towards herself. Hada can't counter such openness and leaves, leaving the girl untouched. When Lilica finds out about this, she explodes in rage and snaps at her assistant. The offended woman finds the case files the detective gave the girl and sends them straight to the press. Look how pleased she is with herself. I have a theory that one of the reasons why Hada stayed with Lilica for so long is because the letter allowed her to be in touch with her own toxic shadow. And now, finally, she's got a chance to cause damage to someone just the way Lilica does. You can call it revenge, but me and my buddy Yun call it individuation. The very next morning, hell breaks loose.
すごい手紙が届いたんですけど、あれ中身は本当なんですか？
テレビ等とワイドニュース
先進政権の話は本当なんでしょうか？風俗嬢時代のお話も聞かせていただきたいんですけどもね。
違法クリニックの実態はご存知だったでしょうか？
Now that everyone knows the truth, a press conference is set up for Lilica so she can comment on the situation. But instead of making excuses and apologizing, she decides to give them something else. Something they want most of all. She gives them a show. And if before she was an idol, now she becomes a legend.
ねえねえ知ってる？リリコっていないんだこれ。なんか本当は CG みたいな。一回死んだの。てか死んだの。それが出てきちゃったの。
5 years later, Lilica's name is still on everyone's lips. The trial over the clinic's case continue, and books are written about the life of the infamous model. However, the culprit herself is considered missing, and no one knows where she is or what happened to her. Until one day, after a shoot, Kozue is invited to a bar where some very peculiar shows take place. She goes down into the back room and comes face to face with an old acquaintance. Lilico is alive, healthy, and shining brighter than ever. Hey, look at that! Hada is here too. I told you she enjoys hanging out with Lilico. And so our girl finds a new place in the world and finally understands that the beauty isn't just about a pretty face. Just like the pompous detective says at the end.
若さは美しいけれど、美しさは若さじゃない。
Happy ending. This is the generally accepted interpretation of the ending as far as I'm concerned, but I see it differently. To understand what I'm talking about, we first need to look very closely at the main character's personality. So, who is Lilico? A crazy psychopath destroying others' lives in the process of achieving her goals, yes, but that's not what matters. What matters more is how she does what she does and what drives her behavior. Let's start with the latter. What does Lilico want? What is her primary need? The film never says it outright, but it gives us a hint. Lilico talks about what she's afraid of.
綺麗じゃなくなったらきっとみんな私から離れてくる。笑われてきっとみんな私を忘れてくわ。
Our fears and desires are like two sides of the same coin. So if you know one, it's not hard to figure out the other. Lilico is terrified that no one will need her, afraid that she will be forgotten. From this we can assume that her true need is a desire for belonging, to form a connection with someone, to be loved and accepted. Now let's look at how she tries to satisfy this need. She completely reshaped her appearance to become better, to make it easier to be loved. Then she came to work in an industry where everything is built on lies, where you have to constantly act as someone you're not. And she tied her self-worth to the admiration of her fans, people with whom it's impossible to have an authentic connection. See what's happening there? In trying to get love and acceptance, Lilica does everything she can to move herself as far away from those things as possible. That's why nothing in her life ever feels satisfying. In the framework she's built for herself, she'll never get what she's after, because real connection and acceptance only happen when you open up to others and show who you truly are. And Lilica has destroyed her own identity to such an extent that even her face isn't hers anymore. It's borrowed. Nearly everything about her is fake, a false self. And when a person's life is dominated by a false self, obsessive control appears automatically. Liliko's carefully constructed world doesn't allow for spontaneity. Anything she can't control, like her boyfriend's fiancé or the young rival, has to be destroyed. In the film, there's a scene where her boyfriend tells her he once wanted to be a musician or an entomologist, but he couldn't because he was born the eldest son of a rich family. Yeah, that's the kind of problems he has. Liliko tells him that's all rubbish.
人生なんて自分の手で決めるものよ。そうよ。自分で決めるのよ。
She sincerely believes that she can reshape life as she pleases because she already succeeded once. But reality can't be controlled. Things out of our influence happen to us constantly, and that idea is simply unacceptable to her. She's convinced that if she just removes the obstacles and becomes right enough, she'll get what she wants. However, that kind of total control can only exist in an artificially constructed world, the exact kind of bubble Liliko lives in. I really like the detail that there are mirrors all over her apartment, but no windows whatsoever. That is how incapable she is of enduring contact with reality. Speaking of taking actions, Liliko is a very proactive character. She constantly makes attempts to keep reality within the framework of her ideas about it, and I can't help but compare her to Sue from The Substance. I didn't like that film, but I could never clearly articulate why, until now, when I watched it after Helter Skelter. In an attempt to create a satire of the entertainment industry, Caroline Fajar simplified her film's plot so much that it ended up feeling bluntly primitive. Never mind that the main character has no personality, I can let it slide, but it really pisses me off that everything just falls into Sue's lap simply because she's beautiful. I might be wrong here, but as I see it, Coralie's film should have been critiquing the cult of beauty. Yet by telling such a shallow story, she actually reinforces the idea in viewers' heads that, yeah, being pretty is enough. You can just become beautiful and suddenly your life is perfect and you land a job immediately, man melt at a single glance, the Yes Because show casually offers you the lead, and so on and on and on. I'm not denying that pretty privilege is very much real, but it seems like Coralie forgot to mention that the privilege comes with a price that has to be paid. No one is ever going to go out of their way for you just because of your looks. Appearance is just a tool. You don't have to use it. But if you want to get something, you'll have to take the deal. I find the producer character in The Substance absolutely adorable. He's supposed to represent one of the Hollywood's biggest scumbags, but actually acts like a fairy godmother to Sue, without even once hinting at any kind of payment for his favors. Meanwhile, the producer in the Japanese film, though he doesn't slurp straight into your face, manages to be far more repulsive, with less than 2 minutes of total screen time.
それじゃあ奥様とお嬢様にもよろしくね。
何言ってんだよ。俺が育てたようなもんだから。
There's your pretty privilege for you. Liliko endures numerous plastic surgeries to get a job, trades sex for a few minutes of extra screen time, and lets others into her bed to later use them as tools. Because yes, beauty is a privilege. But if you want to actually benefit from it, then beauty is a job. And if all you have is your looks, you turn into a toy in other people's hands. Not everyone has the strength to endure that kind of dynamic, where your whole personality is reduced to a commodity. Liliko can handle it because the cruelty of the outside world towards her is nothing compared to her cruelty towards herself. And at the end, it can feel like she's managed to break the vicious cycle. She spent her whole life chasing beauty, and now she's actively destroying her own image and walking away from the spotlight. That's something new. That's character development, right? Well, let's see. Before this, Liliko as a model satisfied the audience's fantasies using her beautiful body to get the attention and love of the public. Now we see Liliko performing in an underground freak club, using her deformed body to get the attention and love of the public. From her look and the room she's in, you can see she's still a prisoner of aesthetics. It's just a different aesthetic now. She hasn't outgrown herself or changed internally. She has simply found a new stage and a new look, but the pattern is still the same, using her body and appearance to get an illusion of control and something at least remotely resembling love. As the detective said,
タイガー・リリー、君の冒険は続く。永遠に。
Pause. While editing, I accidentally discovered definitive proof to back up my theory with color codes. Throughout the movie, Lilico is usually associated with red and white. Red nail polish, clothes, and red being a dominant color in her apartment. Two scenes are colored in blue, her first conversation with the detective and the scene where she is underwater while the truth about her is revealed to the public. Plus, when she receives a letter from her sister, she's also wearing a dress with blue elements. I believe blue represents her authentic self, moments when she's honest and vulnerable. And at the very end, in the club, she's back to red. It's all over the place. She's officially back to square one. Checkmate. I don't know who I was arguing with, but I won. A bit earlier in the same scene, the detective meets Lilica's younger sister, who now looks completely different. She has lost weight and apparently took her sister's advice and went through a couple of plastic surgeries. The detective says that tiger lilies are everywhere, which means that this morbid striving for beauty is, in a way, a universal narrative familiar to every woman. So, let's talk about capitalism. Yes, capitalism, because beauty is a product, aggressively shoved into our faces at every step. At the beginning of the film, we see an opening montage showing us a body completely covered in bandages, young girls discussing beauty stuff, and the world they live in. This world is full of an infinite number of goods and services designed to help girls become better or prettier for whatever reason. From their conversations and reactions, it's clear how normalized all of this is. For them, it's almost like a game. And at the top of this world is our protagonist, Lilico, an idol whose sole purpose is to sell us something that will help us get just a tiny bit closer to her. If you stop and think about it for more than a minute, it's obvious how insane it is that we just take it for granted that our natural face and body as they are not enough, that they require some sort of improvement. It's pure madness of an idea. But what really blew me away was the doctor's monologue.
初めてここに来た頃のことを思い出してごらんなさい。あなたはただの肉の塊だった。私たちが目指しているのは幸福の医療。あなた自身の努力。あなたが望んで自分で手に入れたのです。
The goal of our treatment is your happiness. You got what you wanted for your own efforts. Do you realize the level of gaslighting? These sellers of happiness shift all responsibility onto the girls consuming services that are pushed through false advertisement. They promise to make you happy, but in fact, they maim bodies. And then when a girl gets a series of side effects instead of the promised happiness, they say, well, she chose it herself. She knew what she was getting into. The capitalist machine keeps turning, the money keeps rolling in, and the girls are losing their minds over one beauty trend after another. And it feels like there's no way out. We're all just hostages of the system. Until on my fourth viewing of the film, something in the dialogue finally caught my attention.
あいつ女子供の映画にはしませんなんて軽口叩きがあってさ、女子供に受けなきゃどうするんだっつうんだよなあ。
There it is. They'll do everything they can to convince you that you can't live without their priceless products. But the truth is that demand runs the market, not supply. The power to set standards and define what's normal has always been in our hands. Companies just don't want you to know that they depend on you, not the other way around. Their power over us will last only until we realize it's pointless to look outside for what can only be found within ourselves. Only then will the circle be broken and we will be able to step out of the pointless race for unattainable ideal and find inner peace. Until then, Lilico's story will go on forever, both for her and for other girls as well. If anyone's actually made it this far, let me know in the comments. I want to know every hero personally. If you have anything to add to the conversation, please drop a comment. This film is barely being talked about. We need to fix that. Whatever you agree or disagree with, write it all down. Any input is appreciated. Thanks for watching all this, and if you also liked and subscribed, here's a kiss on both cheeks for you. Mwah. Love you.
Bye bye.